Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice. Today I have with me Ryan Smith, President and Principal Consultant at RLS Consulting. Ryan, how's it going today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So we're recording on December 11th. Recently, finally met in person at AppliedNet in Nashville. That was a good, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months ago at this point. Um, So anyway, great to meet you in person. Um, so you are Colorado based, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Bloomfield is that Denver area or what
Yeah,
part?
Broomfield. Yeah, just north of Denver. It's kind of part of the Denver metro area.
Okay, so I just recorded somebody else from Denver. If I'm not mistaken, weather's still beautiful, basically.
It was pretty cold yesterday. It was like 16 degrees when I took my daughter to school, but today's a little warmer. But
Okay,
Colorado swings like that. We have a lot of up and downs.
okay, but not a lot of snow yet.
Not yet. No, there's a little bit. We got a dusting over the weekend, but yeah. It's actually surprising. Down in the Denver metro area here, we don't get nearly as much snow as the mountains do. So it's actually pretty surprising for people that visit to see how nice and moderate the weather is here in this area.
Yeah, I was hearing that yesterday. So we always give the guest a chance to do the elevator pitch. What is RLS Consulting?
Yeah, so it's really a culmination of a lot of things that I've done over my career. I have background in insurance technology, education, mathematics, and cybersecurity most recently. I've been doing cybersecurity since 2017. And really, with RLS Consulting today, I'm helping agencies sort through all of the challenges and complexities around cybersecurity to find easier ways to protect themselves and their clients.
Yeah. Um, Around cybersecurity, both for themselves and their clients.
Yeah, yeah. So I also, in addition to working with agencies, I'll work with their producers usually, help them talk about cyber risk in simpler ways. I find a lot of people run into a lot of apprehension with the technology aspect of it. And there's simpler ways to talk about this stuff in relation to the business impacts that you have. So that's stuff that, as I've helped agencies over time, they've usually asked me to help their producers a little bit and talk about things in easier ways. So that's where the education background helps me out, is I find easier ways to explain really complicated things to people.
Okay. So when it comes to cyber, 20 we're end of 2024. So at this point, cyber coverage has been available for a good 15 years. And then it's become a really big deal in the last few. And then 3, 4 years ago, we had uh huge cyber losses. And,
Hmm.
and the two things became uh, clear. One of those is that every business has a cyber exposure, and number two, it became a lot harder to the cyber market really hardened. It became a lot harder to get that coverage.
Yeah.
Uh, so in 2024, and I should add that like the average the average agent, this is not their world, right? This is not
Yeah.
native to them. So now that they have an understanding that every client they have needs cyber, but where do you go from there? How do you explain it to the client? Uh,
Yeah.
so that's my guess as to like where agents are. Is that kind of what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, no, I think over the last few years, especially over COVID, we saw a lot of these attacks really become more prevalent. And what happened to really amplify that is when people went home and started working remotely, a lot of offices opened up external ports to allow people to work from home. By doing that, and anytime you make any concession for ease or efficiency with technology, you tend to open up areas of risk with security. So those are at odds typically. And so when offices started to go remote, they open up these extra access points. And if they didn't secure them properly, they're more vulnerable. And so that's what we'd see a lot. And so some of those big attacks that you saw 3 or 4 years ago are part of businesses that have had those kind of exposures taken advantage of. And so on top of that, you look at the technology changing over time. We're in a bit of an arms race with the proactive security measures you can put in place, and then the creative ways attackers are figuring out how to get around them. And so something that I think a lot of businesses are starting to see is that they're in this arms race and they're not doing anything. So they're at a very losing side of this game. And I think where, producers and agents are starting to see that opportunity is helping businesses understand that you don't have to necessarily be targeted. These are crimes of opportunities because those openings that people, those exposures that people have, those can be detected from wherever in the world. So it's very easy for people, just like going through a parking lot and jiggling door handles to figure out which doors they can open. It's the same idea with the technology. So where people struggle, I think, is having that conversation. Like you said, it's very new to them, but understanding the nuances around how people are attacked, what happens to them, how they become a target, how these attacks play out. These are things that the more agents can understand, the better they can have conversations with their prospects, the better they can help them understand their risk, and then the types of coverage that they need to make sure that they're really truly protected.
Okay. So for the listeners, so if I run an agency, 5 producers, independent, uh, how do we start the process to get them educated? What does it look like, and what kind of commitment is it?
For the agency to go through the work,
Yeah.
that's where this is where really I think what I'm doing in my company today can really help a lot of people because I've done this for 7 years now, and many of the businesses that I'd talked to, there were so many low-hanging fruit opportunities that they had in front of them to understand what technology stack you have. Start writing down things like the software and hardware that you have, and start to understand too, who has access to this technology? What types of information is in here? What are the impacts if something should go wrong with this? Do I have data that could get exposed? Do I have information I'm trusting and now if somebody manipulates it, it's going to throw me off or do something else, like I'm going to send money to the wrong place? Or if this technology is completely gone, what's that going to do for our business? And as you start to break down the technology stack that you have and then your dependency on that in those 3 different areas that I listed, that's where you start to understand the risk. From there, once you get a grasp on what's going on, I always like to think about that as like, let's say you have a map here of where you want to go. This tells you where you're at on that map. That's going to help you understand the types of things to focus on to be most impactful as you try to get to your goal. The other side of that, though, is following the road would be grabbing a framework that's guiding you along the best practices. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Understand your risks. Grab a common cybersecurity framework like CIS 18 is a great example. And that's going to tell you based on where you're at, how you're going to get to where your goal is as far as securing yourself. But one other thing that I think helps people understand this is you don't want to think about this as a point in time thing that you do. It's something that it's going to be a part of your business from now on. So I used to say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I kind of go away from that. It's not even a marathon. This is just now part of how you have to operate as a business and things that you have to think about, unfortunately. So hopefully that helps gives people some starting points, but that's a lot of what my company is doing now is putting out content and resources for people to address some of that initial stuff that can help them when they eventually do need a third party or somebody more advanced to come in.
Okay. So basically, help them understand where they're at and where to go for help to actually solidify their situation.
Yeah. And the same stuff can help when you're working with your clients too. So start to talk to them about the technology stacks that they have. How are you depending on some of this technology? The 3 areas I gave before, it goes back to the CIA of cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidential information we want to keep private, integrity of information we want to protect because we want to make sure we trust the technology. If I got an email from you, I want to know it's really from you, things like that. And then availability, the third one is, well, what's going to happen if that's not there when I need it? But if you can get your clients thinking about that too, that's going to help them really understand why they need that policy because now they understand how the technology plays into things. And we get away from talking about how you would get attacked, more of if you get attacked, what could we be dealing with? Then we can work back on, okay, well, how would this happen? Now, how can we protect ourselves? But we need to grasp first on what's at risk.
Okay. How long is the process of to get to get a handle on it, like to at least understand where we're at?
Yeah, you can get a snapshot pretty quickly. I would usually do, initial consultation with people that where after an hour, we could have a pretty good understanding of where you're at and some ideas about what you can do that would be really impactful as you go forward. But to really get there, you can go more advanced and do a really in-depth risk assessment, which if you're doing a good job with it, and also but keep in mind too, you probably have other things on your plate, it's probably going to take a couple months to go back and forth with a consultant, really getting deep into that. Um, and the whole effort really, if any business came to me and said, "Hey, I have 3 months to do this to meet a contract deadline or a requirement that I have," that's really pushing it. You really probably need to give yourself, 6 to 12 months at minimum to do a lot of this kind of stuff because it's, again, you can't typically drop everything that you're doing. And so there's always some kind of give and take. And that's where people fail with this stuff is they don't keep that constant momentum going. And so that's why I go back to the idea is it's not a sprint or a marathon at all. You need to figure out ways to kind of keep this as part of your day to day, week to week, or month to month activities that you do.
Okay, so it becomes a culture change
Yeah.
for the agency.
And I think the culture change is a good way to look at it because that's really where you start to see it fall apart. Is if you don't have the right culture around it and you're not communicating that change internally, you start to have people that go around the different things you put in place. Because again, like I was saying before, you have efficiencies that you've put in place that are probably opening up security risks. So as you address those, you're taking efficiency away from people. So culture is a really good way to look at it because if you don't address that first and get people bought into why they're doing these things and you're changing their job or the way that they do stuff, then you're going to have pushback. And especially if it's not coming from the top down, you're going to have other challenges in place too.
It's a very good point that if they don't understand why the change, they're much less likely to stick with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people think, well, I'm not in IT, so why do I have to worry about any of this kind of stuff? And the point is that everybody has a role to play with all of it. And I think as you start to learn more about it, and if you educate your people, they'll start to realize that they have a part in protecting the business too.
Okay. So I'm always curious on the origin story. How did you realize that this was a need at the insurance agency level?
Um, well, I first started working for Vertafore in 2011, and so I was in InsurTech on that side of things for several years. And I kind of had an opportunity where I had some friends in cybersecurity that were starting a business, so I had a unique opportunity to kind of go into that. But as we sat down as a new company, having come from Vertafore and having relationships with groups like NetView and the Big Eyes and different groups out there, I was very in tune with what was happening in the insurance space and the need for it there between regulations and the level of risk that's there. But also, too, I mean, from my standpoint, as I worked with agencies, I was saying before, they'd have producers that would want help with their clients too. So I saw it as an advantageous place to begin. But it's certainly one of those areas where there's need, there's requirements, there's a high level of risk, and a lot of opportunity. You probably know, a lot of agencies are behind the curve with technology. They struggle with things like the culture, like we were just talking about. And so I think when you see looking at an industry like that, there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And so especially in the cybersecurity space, it's been something where having been in this space now for 7 years, talking about cybersecurity for insurance, there are still presentations I give today where I'm repeating the same stuff I've said for years and years and years, and there's new people in the audience that are hearing it. So I think it's still coming around. There's still a lot of awareness being built.
Okay. How's the reception been now that you've gone off to do this full time?
It's been really good. I recently partnered with Catalyst, and I'm doing a lot with them as a cybersecurity consultant and one of their top voices on cybersecurity. And there's groups like we met at AppliedNet. I mentioned NetView before. The Big Eye associations. A lot of those groups are doing a lot around this topic, and so it's been a great platform for people like myself to get involved in and build awareness. And we usually have a good turnout in presentations that we do with that. Lots of questions. I think there's a lot of people still kind of dipping their toe in the water to understand what I need to do, what it's going to look like, where do I even start? So there's a lot of opportunity for learning, but I'm more and more surprised when I talk to an agency that's been working on this stuff that to see people further down the road and doing better. So it's growing, it's getting better, but there's still a lot of questions and interest in this area.
Okay. What does maturity look like for an agency? Once they're kind of at the uh, maintenance stage
Yeah,
of their cyber being where it needs to be long term.
that definitely gets a lot easier. I'd say the first year, maybe two, can be really hard because you have so much to catch up. A lot of it's because you've been building on your technology stack. You're adding efficiencies, which now you have to go back and think about how you secure these things. So all these things that you've done to make your agency more efficient and faster, you've probably opened up security risks. So the initial effort of getting everything addressed is kind of twofold. You have one, I mentioned kind of understanding your risk and mitigating that, right? But the other side is all the compliance pieces. So there's a lot of different data security laws that insurance agencies have that are not just requiring you to do these things, but to document that you're doing them. And so that's really where a lot of the work happens is you might be great on paper or at least in practice as far as what you're doing, but it doesn't show up on paper. So it's kind of like math in high school. If you don't show your work, it doesn't count. And so you might be doing all these great things to protect your technology, but you need to have it written down. So developing the policy procedures and understanding all of this stuff is really a big first one put your one push. After that, you really kind of get in maintenance mode where you're updating things as they change. You might have some new laws that come into play, so maybe you have to tighten things here or there, but it's going to be easier for you to find out where those places are. And then you're more reactionary on, new risks and vulnerabilities that appear in your environment. So you're just kind of staying on top of whatever's at the top of that risk radar for you and continuing to document and update things as you go. So it's a lot easier, but it's still usually in a lot of these laws that you'll see with agencies, there's still requirements to annually assess your risks, make sure that your policy and procedures align with all of that, understand how you're responding to an attack if that happens, practice through that process, do an incident response plan tabletop test to simulate an attack, and then continue through like the day-to-day types of things like looking for weaknesses that appear or vulnerabilities, train your staff, all that good stuff. So it's a lot easier once you get in the second and beyond, the second year and beyond, but it's still, regular work that you want to keep up on top of. Otherwise, you can find yourself slipping behind or vulnerabilities that get attacked because you let them go.
Okay. Looking at your website, rlsconsulting.co, tell me about the simplifying cyber risk course.
Yeah. So for either path that people take with me, there's really kind of the securing your agency side or talking about cyber risk with your clients if you're a producer. Um, Simplifying cyber risk is kind of the beginning step for all of that. And it goes into some of the things that we've talked about already, actually, is how to understand risk-based cybersecurity in simple ways, how it might impact your business, the factors that might attribute to the likelihood of you getting attacked, how you become a target, all of this base stuff, including even some of the compliance sides of it and what to expect as you get on that path. So a lot of the things that we've kind of been tiptoeing around are things that go in depth in that program, in that course. So for me, that's something that I talk about a lot. So I do a lot of presentations on that content. So this is stuff that's been dialed in over the last several years of having these presentations. So people can go in, they can take that course. It comes in little snippets, like 20 minutes or less, that they get by email every day. So they take that over 5 days, and that'll get you up to a place where now you have some vernacular to help you talk about this stuff in easier ways, some simpler analogies and methodologies to understand and explain this to other people. And then whether you're going to use this for your own personal knowledge to start to secure yourself, or you're going to talk to clients about this, it's kind of giving you that base understanding. I consider it like the Cyber 101.
Okay, so that's simplifycyberrisk.com. An hour of your time divided over 5 days
Yeah.
gets you at least kind of the 101.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I'll say, and I think it's in the course, but that content is stuff that I put into any talk that I give because as you're talking to the audiences, and they're learning this for the first time, you want them to have that context because once you understand that stuff, then we can talk about deeper ideas. And so that's one reason why I encourage people to check that out, even if you're selling cyber liability, is that's going to give you some vocabulary to use with your prospects too. In fact, when you go further into the program and I, work with you to coach you or support you with prospecting and things like that, I'll give you the content to be able to go present that to people too. So you can steal that kind of content. And I find that does help people when you can talk about it in this way and make it really easy for people to understand. They start to understand the value in your solution. And so that cyber liability offer that you're going to bring to them is going to make a lot more sense when you can explain it to them that way.
Okay. What are the clients saying? Like your clients, what once they uh improve their situation, what kind of feedback are they giving you?
Well, I hear often it's a lot of work. It's surprising to them. I've had some who we've gone through this, and even just starting to inventory technology, they've found servers they've forgotten about in closets that were still hooked up to the internet. They've they've had all kinds of weird things come to the forefront that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't gotten more organized. So I think there's some growing pains around it because of the work that's involved in the detail. But once you're on that side where you understand things better, they like having a better perspective to make decisions. Because if you're a small agency, you're not going to buy everything that comes across your table, right? You have to pick and choose where you put that money, and your time is valuable too. So this helps you understand where to be most impactful. And I think people feel a lot more confident, or at least I hear that once they've gone through all this kind of stuff, they know what they need to do. They know what's most important to do first. And then I think too, a lot of people feel excited about the things that they have been doing because now they see that that's actually helping them in different places too.
Okay. If we want to meet you in person at a future conference, where are the best places to find you?
I do a lot with Catalyst today. So anywhere Catalyst's going to be, I might be. We do have a new baby coming in January. So
Right.
depending on when this airs and stuff like that, I might not be traveling for a little while. But I usually try to get out to different shows like NetView and AppliedNet. There are a number that are on my list for next year that I really like to go to, but you usually find me in those kind of user group areas or some of the different Big I state um, association chapter meetings or different types of conferences that they might put on. So I'm around online a lot too. So LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of content from me, webinars, little helpful videos, and other types of resources that I share too.
All right. Excellent. When this goes live, I will tag you on LinkedIn, and the show notes will have both your LinkedIn and the website rlsconsulting.co. The course is simplifycyberrisk.com. Awesome. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's fun talking with you.